So welcome everyone to the School Marketing Show Live. We took a bit of a break, but we are back at our new day and time. We are now doing Mondays at 1:30 Eastern time. So we're so excited to be here. We're trying to practice what we preach here at Final Sight. So we saw that School Marketing Show Live was getting a little more engagement. We did it a little earlier in the week. So we're trying out this new day on Mondays at 1:30. So we're excited that you're here with us, whether you're here with us live or if you want to watch recorded later, that's great. So if you haven't been here with us before for the School Marketing Show Live, here at Final Sight, professional development and education are really at the core of our culture. So the show is just a way for us to get schools and districts around the world educated and in the know on best practices around marketing, communications, admissions, advancement, you name it, we'll try to cover it. So each episode, we share the who, what, when, where, why, and most importantly, how on school and district marketing and communication strategies. So we chose this live format just to really get your input. Every topic that we choose is around a topic that we are currently getting a lot of questions about. So please feel free to use the comment section to let us know what you're interested in learning, and we will try to cover it on our next episode. So if you were here with us on the last episode, we talked about communicating during uncertain times. And as we discussed, school and district communications plans for the fall are more important than ever before. And that brings us to our topic this week on virtual open houses. So despite COVID-19 and your plans for the fall, prospecting is still, of course, top of mind. Whether you're planning to be in person, hybrid, or fully remote this fall, your open houses will no doubt look different. So I encourage you to stop what you're doing if you're interested in learning on this, and we will just strategize together. So as always, I have Mia here with me. She is an expert on the topic of virtual events. She has done a lot of blog content and webinars on this. So I will let her kick it off to really give us a taste of why we're talking about this right now.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. First things first, why do we need to think about this year's open houses differently? And, at Final Sight, we always try to bring every event, every content piece, everything that we talk to a school about to a stage of the funnel. Because when we think about our events in a silo, when we think about our efforts in a silo, it's really easy to forget about that top, middle, and bottom of the funnel, which we've talked about in previous school marketing show episodes. So typically where we used to see that open house sit, that in-person open house, was a very middle to bottom of the funnel event. Someone probably had already submitted an inquiry form. They're familiar with your school. They're really engaged, and they're taking 3 to 4 hours out of their day on a work day, taking time off from work to come explore your campus. So that is a huge commitment. And when we think about that, in comparison to a virtual event, we think of virtual events as being much more accessible, much shorter, and much less of a commitment than that in-person event, which means they no longer solely sit at that middle to bottom of your funnel. They actually sit much higher up in the funnel because of their length, their brevity, and their accessibility to families at all stages of the research process. And what we're seeing right now in many of our schools, our private schools across the country, is actually a surge in admissions inquiries and a surge in traffic, because parents are feeling like, hey, these private schools are opening, they already have smaller classroom sizes, they're going to at least give this a shot in comparison to my public school system, and I want my child to have that in-person experience. So they're seeing this surge in inquiries and they're seeing this surge in engagement, which means we can no longer just think about our once a year open house. We need to think, how can we get the information about our school and that open house experience in the hands of people earlier on and more often? So, I've been having a lot of conversations with our schools via the summer camp networking sessions and just in some one-on-one calls, especially as we gear up for our virtual admissions expert course in just a couple of weeks here. I'm encouraging you to kind of just unlearn and unthink everything that you've already known and ever done for an in-person open house and say, okay, this is a totally new landscape. This is totally uncharted territories. We need to just come up with something new, come up with something fresh. We're not turning an in-person 1 day 4-hour event with 1,000 people into a virtual 1 day 4-hour event with 1,000 people. We might be hosting a weekly 30-minute virtual open house. Maybe we host a weekly panel discussion, a weekly Q&A. Maybe we have a monthly 90-minute event, but it's not going to look the same because the territory is not the same. You can't explore the same roads, or you can't explore different roads with the same map. Like we need to completely rewrite what we're doing here. So, I mean, that really comes, why are we thinking about this differently? Because we're in a different landscape. And I think that if you walk into the fall thinking, oh man, I'm never going to get 1,000 people to a 4-hour virtual event. Well, of course you're not going to. Like, no parent is going to sit in front of their computer for 4 hours while they watch some pre-recorded content from your head of school. So I think what we really need to do is say, how can we appeal to our audiences in the way that they like to consume content? And how do we use it to reach people earlier on in that admissions process, not when they're closer to making the decision, but much, much earlier on, to help fuel our funnel, especially if our school is not seeing that surge in inquiries like some of the schools that we're hearing from are. So from a high level, that kind of answers the why. But Kristen, most importantly, what format should these virtual open houses, virtual admissions events be taking place in?
Right. So as Mia said, it's so important in this landscape, thinking virtually, to just kind of discard anything that you would think of in terms of your in-person event. You want to not set those standards for yourself, only because it will just cause stress trying to create something that could have been in this overwhelming environment. So it's so important to think about where your families are, what they're doing, and trying to reach them where it's most convenient for them. So if we're really thinking about a totally new event, whether it's multiple events like Mia mentioned, or if you just kind of break it up that way, it would be great. So really think of it 3 ways. It could be 100% virtual, that is live streamed. So if you wanted to do a weekly, Q&A through Zoom, that would be live streamed. If you wanted to live stream directly to your website, once a week from your head of school, giving a welcome, things like that, that's a great way to go. You can also do something that is pre-recorded. I would say probably for this format, don't go 100% pre-recorded. It's really great to couple everything all together with some two-way communication. That's probably the most important piece of this, because your pre-recorded content, whether it's, virtual tours around campus and videos of students, that's fantastic, and definitely utilize those, but make sure you're also offering a two-way communication in some sort of way across these events, just so that your families feel that human touch that they're not getting from those in-person events that you can offer in your virtual events. So pre-recorded content can really be anything you wish and can take on any form really. So from teachers introducing themselves to a welcome video from your head of school, pre-recorded content is really just a great way to save time and also really have top-notch quality. So we've seen that a lot with some schools that are already ahead a little bit, creating landing pages with some pre-recorded content. It looks great, but then you're also live stream content, which is that other piece of it, is great for engaging your prospective families. So whether that is that two-way communication or even just offering that human touch, it's ideal for Q&A sessions that you would normally host in person at your open houses and things like that. So those are all great things to think about. When you're thinking about where you're going to have it live, your open house experience could live on a single landing page where you offer that pre-recorded video content directly on the page, like I mentioned earlier. Or if you have a hybrid model, you can consider adding a Zoom link to join your live session directly on that landing page where your pre-recorded content is. This is really a unique and helpful opportunity, just because, as Mia mentioned, it's no longer in a silo. It's no longer a single day necessarily. So your virtual open house content can really live on past the point of your official date. If you want to have that landing page stay up with maybe a recording of any live Q&As, things like that, in a virtual format, your school has the potential to reach more families in this sense. So if someone maybe can't join live, they can still access it later and still see the value of your school. So one example that Mia actually had found that's really great is the Hill School's Reimagined Visit Days, or Revisit Days, excuse me, that kind of took on this idea. So through pre-recorded videos that kind of give a taste of life at school coupled with a live Q&A recording, it was a great experience overall, and you can still access that landing page. So we'll drop that link in the comments after this, but that's a great one to check out from the Hill School. And that really kind of covers what you should be thinking about in terms of format, but I'll just let Mia take it back over to talk about when you should be holding these events.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, so again, kind of thinking back to, I think a lot of schools, they had 2 or 3 big fall open houses that probably drew hundreds and hundreds of people. And if you were to sit back and ask yourself, well, what's the goal of that event? In a lot of cases, it was just to get them to campus so they could see your campus. But there's so many other pivotal parts of that event that are really going to impact whether or not they choose to enroll at your school, such as engaging with your faculty, meeting with other students and getting to hear from them one-on-one about that experience. And those types of authentic conversations and interactions are going to be the absolute cornerstone of these virtual events, right? Because we no longer do have the opportunity to get them to campus. We need to rely on the heart and soul of our campus, which is the people. And actually, in a virtual world, our people are more accessible than ever before. Prestigious alumni who could not come to an open house to speak, who are not there to answer questions, can now be on a pre-recorded Zoom interview that you post on your blog or you post on social media or you share on a landing page or, like one of those Reimagine Revisit pages that the Hill School did. So I find that the question of like when is kind of like this loaded question, because I think it's really hard to say, well, you should host an event in September, October, and November, or like you should host something weekly, or you should host something bi-weekly, or host smaller events that lead up to a big event. I think you're going to have to do what you have the capacity to do and what is going to help at the end of the day, help you reach your goal, right? So if your goal is always like, we need 1,000 people at our in-person open house because it has a 60% conversion rate and we get, 600 applicants. And from there we get 125 enrolled students. Fine. Your goal is 1,000 registrants. You're not going to get that in a single day event. So what is that going to take on? Is that going to be a weekly event, a bi-weekly event? Are you going to host some webinars that are like how to choose the right private school, considerations for choosing your private school? Can you offer something really, really at the top of the funnel to get people in your system earlier? At the end of the day, it's all about just getting that contact information so you can tell them your story and get them engaging with you. So I think when it's a heavy question, because I don't think that there is the right answer. And I think with all of these best practices that we've been sharing and getting out there and telling, there is no best practice. Like, this is our first time doing this across the board, right? But what we can say is, okay, we are in uncharted territories. We're in a totally different space right now. We're just going to try this for the month of September and see what happens. And if that works, let's duplicate it in October and November and keep doing it until we reach our goal. Maybe we try something in September and it's a total flop and we're like, okay, you want to know what? We're going to go back to like a one big virtual event and see what happens. I think we have to remember that everything is changing by the minute and we need to be prepared for that. I think that when I think of the workload and I think of ROI, I think that those smaller micro admission events that are maybe like an hour on a bi-weekly basis are going to help you get more bang for your buck, especially for parents who want to engage and ask questions. And for that, you can have some pre-recorded content so you're not duplicating your effort time and time again, but you're always going to have that live element that allows that piece of engagement. So I think you're going to have to do whatever works for you, whatever you have the capacity to do. But I think at the end of the day, question, Kristen, who they're reaching with these events is going to determine the success of them. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when we're thinking of the who, obviously the easy answer is potential families, right? So you want to get potential families into your funnel to get them to your virtual open house, eventually enroll. So that's the easy answer. But we're thinking, like Mia had said, really with this inbound approach. So there are so many ways you can go about deciding who you should be reaching. So say, earlier Mia mentioned if you do something that's a little more top of the funnel, so maybe a webinar on, choosing a private school. If you get some contacts from that, that's a great audience to hit with some of your virtual open house type events that you would be giving, live Q&As, any opportunities like that. That's a great opportunity to do that. So consider that if you wanted to, and you should really, if you are going to have a more a larger virtual open house or something that is recurring, consider taking this inbound approach with where your potential families are spending most of their time, which is social media and they're online. So making sure that one, your landing page has good SEO if you are offering like a landing page experience on your website. Definitely on social media, consider maybe just boosting or even go fully into ads and a month out begin pushing that on Facebook. If it is a virtual open house, you can get very targeted in Facebook ads there with location, age, things like that. So you likely can hit your target audience directly in Facebook that way. And just really making sure that you're taking the time in advance to market this virtual format, to get on these channels and, make sure that you get those families in the door. So after you consider, doing a Facebook ad, things like that. If you do have a webinar, like Mia had mentioned, hitting them then with an email confirmation, giving them the information they need, making sure that you're offering the most personalized experience possible without being in person is key here. So again, that two-way communication. So if you do have a form that families fill out to sign up for a virtual event of some sort, making sure that you're following up with emails before the event, giving them some more helpful information, and then following up after, which we'll get into here at the end of our discussion. That is the best way you can really nail down who you should be reaching. Definitely don't need to think high level in this case, which is really fortunate. Like Mia had mentioned, this can be those micro moments. So you can test out different things, see what maybe works. If you have one event in September, maybe try another one in October. You can see what audiences are working for you and how you garnered those audiences. So really, again, thinking about the personal touch is so important. And I think that's probably the crux of everything we're speaking of here. So making sure that you're giving families that human experience. We've seen some schools create a custom landing page for parents to sign up for coffee chats, which again is like those little micro moments, maybe a Q&A with the athletics director, someone, anyone on your school's team that may be relevant to potential families. You should consider just playing around with and seeing how that works out for you and how you can really, get that audience nailed down for yourself. So that kind of leads into then where you should hold your virtual open houses. And there are so many options. I mean, obviously, since we've been very virtual for a while now, there are some great options. And even here at Final Site, we've tried, different formats and we've kind of seen what could work. So first of all, Zoom, obviously, and Google Hangouts are both, very easy and affordable options for connecting your community when person-to-person interaction can't happen in person. So Zoom and Google Hangouts are a great option. A password-protected landing page is fantastic. So if you are able to do that to house any pre-recorded content, like I had mentioned earlier, and then also maybe even live stream directly to that page, which we can get into, in a little bit. That's great. So a password protected landing page. Facebook groups are kind of one of my personal favorites getting into it. I love social media, and I think Facebook groups are a great way to reach these prospective families that are likely all on Facebook. We see with demographics. So you can, do a private Facebook group, split it up into rooms where you can hop on camera like we are today and have live Q&As directly in Facebook. Facebook groups are a great thing to try out, and they are free. So recommend checking that out. And then if you are a Final Site client, Final Site live streaming by Local Live is a flexible and affordable option to have live streaming classroom sessions, sports, small in-person events if you do get into that a little further on. Great option if you want to live stream directly to your landing page. And you can even experiment with some other social media offerings. Instagram stories is a great one. Obviously not as a professional and polished option, but if you did want to provide any sort of, Instagram story highlights of some, talking head videos from teachers or even current students, that's a great option. You don't need high quality equipment to do something that makes an impact, and Instagram stories kind of really attest to that. So now that we've kind of gotten into the nitty gritty, I think I'll pass it back over to Mia just to briefly talk about how we can move forward after you're maybe done with some of these events.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kristen, there was something that you mentioned when you were talking about, who should we reach? And I know I had used the term micro events, but you went even smaller and you said micro moments. And I think we here at Final Site are huge fans of repurposing everything that we do. And I think in the virtual world, there are a lot of micro moments that are happening. And I think we can also make a lot of moments happen intentionally, such as Q&As with an alumni, or like you said, a faculty member, a coach, student interviews, student testimonials. And I think whether or not you're hybrid or you're in person, or you're completely remote, whatever that might look like, all of those things that you're putting together for your open house or your virtual event can actually be used as you move forward when that admission event is over. Because all of this content that you're creating, like, again, it doesn't live in a silo. It lives as part of your marketing communications material that you can then put on a landing page, on a blog, in a follow-up email. So what's really important with any of these admission events is you really understand where it sits in the funnel. So a webinar about how to choose the right private school or safety precautions to be thinking about as you choose a private school, that sits really high at the top of the funnel. So the type of content that follows that is going to look a lot different than someone who attends a virtual open house that might be a little bit heftier, like, an hour to 90 minutes. And someone who attends a 20-minute Q&A session, the follow-up for that is going to look different than the person who attends the 90-minute event. So thinking about, okay, like what type of prospective family are we trying to reach with this piece of content? Where can we best project they are in the journey? And what content do we have to then share with them? Because like you said, Kristen, everything really has to be hyper personalized. For parents right now who might be scrambling to try and send their kid to a private school, they might just be sending out applications. And you really want to make sure that you are staying top of mind with content that they care about. So that means highlighting your faculty, highlighting your curriculum guide, highlighting what you're doing to make sure that students are safe on campus. So taking some of those key points that were always important at an open house and are now important or now also more important, such as safety that you're doing at your school, making sure that you have emails that have that content. In addition to emails, if you have a landing page on your website, you can also use that Facebook pixel to retarget prospective families on social media with some more content as well. So I think, there is a piece of this where it's like, okay, obviously once your open house is over, you can send a survey, you can send a follow-up email, but like, it's so much more than that. It's about having a campaign in place that automates, 3 or 4 emails to keep them engaged, to help them make that next step. It's about having a social media campaign that always makes sure your school is top of mind. And I think too, like going back to those micro events and the funnel and just kind of thinking about where these things sit, someone who attends a webinar or visits a landing page on your website about admissions is a great audience to market one of your virtual events to, or your ongoing virtual events. In week 1 of summer camp, if anyone watching here is attending summer camp, we talked about how important it is to think like a TV station. Like when I turn on the Food Network or I turn on HGTV, I know exactly what I'm going to get and when. It's predictable. And I really encourage you to think about your admissions season and your admissions events and all of your fall events in that exact same way. We're virtual. We might be in person. We might not be in person. There might be some type of hybrid, but all of that's kind of unknown. So what can we do that's predictable where at least they know like, okay, like this is where I go at this time and like this is what I'm going to get. And I think that also kind of makes the follow-up easier for you as well, because you're just going to have like this math equation where you're like, the event's this day, we send this 3 emails, we check our conversion rates, and then maybe we do a personal outreach to anyone who didn't convert at that point in time. So I think that there's a lot of different things that go into play there. But what we want to make sure doesn't happen is the event happens and then like, that's it. Like we wait for inquiries or we wait for applications. You kind of just always want that point of contact. Like you always want that connection. And I'm saying that, and I just can't help but think of the new Taylor Swift album and her song Invisible String. And I'm like thinking about how there's this invisible string tying together like that first touch all the way to the end. Like there should be something that connects them the entire time, from the first time that they connect with your school all the way to enrolling. Like just something, whether it's an email, an ongoing social media ad, just something that keeps them connected to you and your school and your brand at all times. There was no way I was going to make it through this episode without talking about that. I think
it was perfect.
So that's kind of our take on virtual admission events. And I think, Kristen, well, before we even did this episode, we did so much time talking about how like, this isn't probably maybe what people expect to hear. Like maybe they expect to hear, okay, like this is what you should have at your 4-hour Friday virtual admission event. And like, that's not, I think like that'd be bad advice on our half, because I think it's really hard to keep people engaged for that amount of time. Especially just knowing like all the distractions that come from being at home. So like, we hope that we've inspired you to kind of think about your admissions events totally differently. And I think that there's something like really cool about being like, okay, we're trying this totally new thing. And there's almost like no KPIs to tell us whether or not it was better or worse than our in-person open house. But like, comparison is the thief of joy. And if we go into this thinking like our virtual event is going to be the same as the in-person, like it's not. So I think just creating something totally new, like I'm curious to see if we'll even call them virtual open houses. Like what will we call them? I don't know, but I think it's gonna be cool to find out and see the creativity that happens this fall. So
absolutely, yeah.
So closing it up, I believe our next episode will be in 2 weeks. So 2 Mondays from now, we have an awesome virtual admissions expert course. In the meantime, Kristen and I are so excited about that. It is completely booked up. It is our first expert course that we're hosting, and we try to offer like a more consultative approach. So keep an eye on our calendar for more of those. I know we have a social media one coming up, as well as an email one in the next few months. So we're really excited about being able to offer like this more hands-on approach to help you like actually execute your campaigns, not just tell you from a high level that, hey, this is what you should be doing. Like, let's do it together over the course of a day. So really excited about those opportunities. And then our next school marketing show live episode will actually be on fall advertising mistakes. Kristen, our school advertising expert and inbound marketing manager, is definitely going to be leading the charge on that one. But we'll be talking about all of the pitfalls of your social media ad campaigns, PPC ad campaigns, and landing page conversion mistakes. So excited to talk about that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today for Monday's episode of the School Marketing Show Live. Let us know your thoughts about fall admission events in the comments. And tell us what you think your fall admission events are going to be like. We'd love to hear it, and we'd love to be inspired by everything that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks all for joining us. And I'm sure we will see you again on August 10th.
Bye, everyone.